It's been more than a decade since Ontario legalized same-sex marriage, and to many, Toronto's Pride Parade is now seen as a celebration rather than a political demonstration or protest. But as the deadly shooting this week in Orlando, Florida shows all too clearly, homophobia is hardly a thing of the past. Joining us now for more, Carleen Williams-Clark. She is manager of direct services at the 519. That's a City of Toronto agency serving the LGBTQ community. And Mathieu Chantelois, who is executive director of Pride Toronto. And I want to thank both of you for coming in and having this discussion with us in what has been just an appallingly bad week, starting with the events in Orlando. And Mathieu, I want to start with you on this. I suspect everybody had a different first reaction when they heard what happened in Orlando. What was yours?
Well, I heard it from my mom, who sent me a text. And there's nothing worse, at least for me, to have your mom being afraid for your safety. And that was exactly the feeling that I had. My mom sent me a text saying, I love you. I know that the work that you do is important, but do you really have to do this? Please come back in Montreal. So it was extremely emotional. Then I turned on the TV. And I really had cramps in my stomach, and then I was with my husband, and I started to cry. It was extremely, extremely difficult. And then I got all the emails and the phone calls from people from the community, and it was a true roller coaster. Some people were just angry, other people were crying. A lot of people couldn't really see what happened as well.
You're from Montreal originally.
I'm from Montreal.
And your mom is still there.
Yes.
When she asked you to come home, did you entertain the idea for a minute?
No, but no, of course not. And what I told my mom is that there's people around the world that do work that are a lot more dangerous than the work that I do. You know, I consider myself an activist, but I'm extremely privileged to be in Toronto, in a city where we celebrate more than often the power and the beauty of diversity. So that's what I told my mom, right? And she got it. But I've been getting a phone call every day since, and I can tell in the tone of her voice that it's really, really difficult for her.
She is worried about her son.
Yes.
Understandably. Carleen, how about you? Your first reaction when you heard the news from Orlando?
Okay, for me, my first reaction didn't come until I got into work because I did not see the news. And my supervisor texted me and said, what happened? You see what happened in Orlando? I was like, huh? What happened in Orlando? And, you know, and then she sent me the information, she sent me the link. And when I saw it, I felt, oh my goodness. Is this a prank or is this real? And I called some friends and asked them, you know, go online and check it for me until I get in my office to see what's going on. And I went online myself and I was like, wow. I have many friends in Orlando, in Florida area, and I was like, oh my God, I wonder if any of my friends are hurt or harmed or anything. And I tried to reach some, and some I did, but I was still in shock. I was like surprised. I was like, this is unbelievable. I can't, believe that this is happening. Being homosexual is so open, and Orlando is one of those cities that you can, just feel free to be yourself too. And I thought it was one of the most, saddest things that I've ever heard.
Is this anything you ever worried about happening in Toronto?
I've never really worried about that because for me, although homophobia exists everywhere, and here in Toronto, I usually just feel that, people are so open and, we go to parties all the time, never have to worry about anything, like this, someone barging in and shooting up the place. It was just never something ever crossed my mind that it could happen.
Mathieu, how about you? Ever on your radar screen for Toronto?
Absolutely. I work for Pride Toronto. What we do is to try to create a safe space for our community. This is what Pride is all about, creating a space where we can all gather together and feel safe, feel that we belong, feel welcome as well. But safety is our first priority. So sadly, this is something that I've been thinking a lot about over the years. And I was not working for Pride when we did World Pride, but the bombing in Boston happened just before.
The marathon.
So, the marathon. So for all of the people at Pride, they saw all the red flags. And we have meeting with the police on every month. So we were thinking about this in October or in November.
As a result of
more now.
Orlando, will you change anything about this year's Pride celebrations?
Yes, we will have more security. I met with the chief of police earlier this week, with the RCMP, and with a lot of other people that I can't even mention here, because that's not the thing that we do, right? When we create some safety plan, we don't talk about the details afterwards, but we're taking this extremely seriously.
And are you satisfied that the RCMP and the police share your concerns?
Absolutely. It's quite a blessing. We're really working well together, and we all have the same goal, and it's to have a safe and successful Pride, and we will. You know, you were mentioning in your introduction that it was important that for a lot of people it was just a celebration in the past. Now there's a sense of making Pride political, what it should be. 35 years ago, Pride was a riot. And for me, that's extremely important to bring back these roots. And I think that a lot of people will come out, people that you don't see usually. At Pride, we get phone calls, emails on every hour of people saying, I was supposed to be at a cottage. I'll be there now. I have some of my friends that screen grab some Facebook message from their parents saying, we've never been to Pride. We will be here this year. We had a lot of people entering the parade that were not supposed to, big companies as well. Everybody understand that going in the street this year is extremely important. We will not go back in the closet. We will not become invisible. We need to be out there, and we need to be many of us out there.
Do you think, Carleen, that, I mean, it sounds like this will be a more political demonstration or parade this year. Is this a teachable moment insofar as maybe something constructive can come out of this awful event in Orlando?
This is indeed a teachable moment. This has given us the opportunity to reflect, to understand, and listen to the voices of experience. This is a time for all of us to come together, and people are speaking now. People are not afraid to stand up. People are being, vigilant. People are being very direct in the way they're communicating. People are supporting each other. And of course, this will now give more voice to the community, allow us to expand ourselves and, claim whatever is rightfully ours. We deserve to have a space on this earth. And that is what people are looking at right now and talking about. This is a vibe that we're looking at. This is, we're thinking of security more. We're thinking about what can happen. We're thinking about the love.
Sure. For people who live outside downtown Toronto, they may not. I mean, the 519 is a well-known downtown Toronto community center, very much frequented by LGBTQ people. Will you have more security on hand there now?
Okay, so let me explain this. The 519 has always thought of security. It is always something that we do. It's a part of our yearly planning for our green space activities. We actually engage security forces. We go ahead with training them how to deal with the population, the diverse groups that come to the 519 and our events. Of course, security is our utmost. We're looking at making sure that people feel safe. So whatever that looks like, we're intending on doing that.
And have you had threats that concerned you at the 519 in the past?
We have never had any threats that really concerned us per se to say, but it was always our, issues to say, security is important. It doesn't matter because, you see who we are servicing at the 519, who comes in, and our population just need to understand that, security is important. And this is always, and I continue to say always, topmost for us to think about.
Understood. Mathieu, there has always been a decent police presence at the Pride events in the past. I gather this year you're going to have more non-uniformed officers involved. How come?
Well, our community, and especially some marginalized people in our community, have a really challenging relationship with the police. They had in the past, and things are getting better, but our trans community still have a lot of problems with the police. Same thing for our Black community, and I can go on. And so it's important for us to not the policeman and woman in uniform is not what the show should be about, and we want people to feel comfortable. So the best way to make the people, especially the one from the marginalized community, and we have to think about them all the time because they're one of the major reasons why we are taking the street and why we are marching is to make sure that they feel comfortable in the places that we are creating.
I want to ask you, Carleen, just about a bit about your background, if I can. Where are you from originally?
I am originally from Jamaica.
And what is it like to be gay in Jamaica these days?
Well, unfortunately, it's still a horror story. Quite recently, we lost, two young men who were murdered in Montego Bay because they were gay.
There's no question in your mind that that's why they were killed.
That's why they were killed. They were killed together. They were partners. And, although we have very vibrant, activists on the ground like J Flag and We Change and, Quality Citizenship for Jamaicans are still there, but homophobia is still very rampant. People are still living in fear. People are working towards better living, but it's still a horror place. For me, some people would say it's a bit better, but I will say it's worse because when I left Jamaica in 2009, we didn't have half as many young gay people living on the streets. And now we have many, many living on the streets and still living in fear.
Why do you think Jamaica has been slower to accept the LGBTQ community compared to other places in this world?
Jamaica likes to believe in being a sovereign nation, and we have a lot of elements. We have the church, we have the music, we have people who believe that being gay is imported, it's a foreign thing, it's not a black man's thing, it's not Jamaican, and therefore they're very adamant, and especially when good things happen to gay people or for gay people in, Europe or in North America, then it is seen that, well, you gay people in Jamaica are going to want the same thing, and it's not going to happen here. We don't want you to corrupt our children. It's just not going to happen. And therefore, we do have our anti-sodomy law still on our books, a law that was adapted from, come down from the UK when we were a UK colony. And they have removed that, but we are still hanging on to it.
Conversely, Mathieu, can you think of a better place in the world to be an openly gay person than Toronto, Ontario, Canada?
No. We're extremely lucky. We're really, really privileged. We're in the middle of the first ever Pride Month, where every day we're like in museums and all the other cultural institutions where we celebrate who we are. It's really about celebrating diversity, and Toronto does this better than anybody else. What's scary for us now is that our lives must go on. The show must go on. The month must go on. Tonight we're going to be at Fly in a nightclub. This is the first time since what happened in Orlando that we will go as an official event in a club, and we will dance, and that's going to be an act of resilience. That's going to be an act of activism. We will be there and we will be dancing, and that may seem like nothing, but the clubs for our community were one of the only places where we feel extremely, extremely at ease. Safe. Like, I can kiss my husband in a club without looking at people around to see if they're looking at me. I can hold his hand. I can hug him. That's a very, very special place for many people in our community. We need to take back our clubs. That's extremely important.
Now, I don't want to be sort of needlessly political about this, but the fact is that the current mayor of Toronto marches in the Pride Day parade, has been very open and welcoming to LGBTQ people in the capital city of the province. His predecessor was not. So if I asked you that same question a few years ago, when Rob Ford was still the mayor of Toronto, would you have been able to give me the same answer?
Probably not. The conversation is totally different this year, especially because we're going to have for the first time the sitting Prime Minister, Justin Trudeau, walking in the parade with Kathleen Wynne and her partner, and with the mayor of the city. We have three of the biggest leaders of our nation walking in the parade together. That's also a message that we are sending to the world. Like when Mr. Trudeau announced that he was walking in the parade, we made the news all over the world. It was on the cover of the biggest newspaper in Australia. We are changing the world, and that's amazing.
Sheldon, I want to go to the bottom of page 2 here and share some of these numbers with our guests here. I'm sure you know them already, but here we go. Talking about hate crimes in the capital city here and the explanation behind them. And the stats show that 43% are religiously based. Sexual orientation accounts for 1 in 5, and race accounts for roughly 1 in 5 as well. My hunch is, 25 years ago, if we were having this discussion, the number of hate crimes motivated by sexual orientation would not have been 20%, it would have been much higher. That's my hunch. Having said that, how much homophobia do you think still exists here in the capital city, or in fact in the whole province of Ontario?
There is still a lot of homophobia.
A lot, Caroline?
I would say a lot because, working with the LGBTQ community, especially newcomers who are coming from countries where they are running away from persecution based on their sexual orientation or gender identity, and coming here and not only facing racism, but they do face homophobia. It's much different. And I would say it's on a different level here because even though there's homophobia, there is also some recourse for justice while they're coming from countries where there's absolutely, nothing. But we do have transphobia that happens, and that is on a very high rate. So therefore, it's not that it has dissolved completely or it has dropped so far below. It is there. It is quietly happening. People report that, I was just walking down the road today and somebody shouted some, very derogative term because of the way I look. I'm surprised. I'm in Canada. I'm in Toronto. I didn't expect this to happen, but it is happening. And, for a country, or should I say for a city that's moving forward and who's that's so very open about sexual orientation and gender identity, and now also introducing in the books human rights for trans people, I would not have expected to see and hear so many people talking about the homophobia that they're facing.
Mathieu, you've already said you think Toronto is maybe the best place in the world to live if you're an openly gay person.
Yeah, we still have a lot of work to do, and you said openly gay, but let's talk about transphobia for a second. Okay. All my trans friends are having a really, really rough time on a daily basis, and sometimes in our own community, we don't listen enough to them. We don't give them the voice. I think it's extremely important for us as a city to tell our trans friends that they're not invisible. We can see them, we can hear them, we support them, we stand for them, and we love them. That's so important right now, and there's so much work that still needs to be done.
Well, yes, Caroline, you wanted to add?
And to fall on the heel of Matthew, at the 519, we do have our training and education department. So we go out and train people in the workforces and whatever agencies that who are likely to work with LGBT people, probably without knowing.
So who's this? The police?
We talk about like hospitality workers, social workers. We're looking to do with the police, and wherever we can go. We're going even outside of Toronto, in small towns outside of Toronto's, we're training people to understand, to work with the diversity. There were times when a newcomer who identifies LGBTQ goes to seek services and they're referred to the 519 because they don't service or they don't have people who will understand the issues. So we're trying to say to people, instead of forwarding them to the 519, you have to work with them, and this is how you can, by understanding who they are as human beings, what their needs are. Doesn't matter their sexual orientation. So we're very key on training, on education, and that is something that we've been working on.
Mathieu, let me raise the issue of the curriculum, of the sex education curriculum that the province of Ontario has, I guess, tried to update for the first time in a couple of decades. That attempt did bring some reaction forward that was, how do you want to describe it? Uncomfortable with the whole issue.
Yes.
How did you react to that?
Well, I think that was a good way for us to have a mirror of what the society still think and see, right? Because what is in this curriculum is really not that much, and it's really important conversation. People died in Orlando because of this. The killer was an American that lives in a society where we still talk about trans folk as pedophile or or rapists, and we live in a society where a lot of people still think about us as a community and think that we should not talk about our realities, we should not talk about our love, and that's a reality. This year, for the first time, I did some flag raisings in elementary and high schools, and for me that was so refreshing.
In what city?
In Toronto.
Only in Toronto.
Only in Toronto.
Okay, well this raises a follow-up for me, which is, particularly downtown Toronto, but much of Toronto seems pretty calm about these issues these days. I wonder if you, and you know what, I don't want to stereotype here because I'm sure there's plenty of progressive people in rural Ontario who are, fine with all of this, but there's some who are not. This is a work in progress for some parts of rural Ontario. Mm-hmm. Do you ever get into the rural parts of the province and have any dealings with that?
I've done a lot of parades outside of Toronto, and I see people wearing masks, because they live in a small city and small villages, and they are afraid of showing their face. They don't want their neighbors to know about the gender identity or sexual orientation. So this is still a reality. It's out there, and that's another reason why Pride matters.
How would you rate the tolerance level outside of the capital city?
Ooh. In some places it's 50-50, some places it's less than 50%. You find that some people, especially, and I like to talk about newcomers because those are the people that I work with a lot. And because, initially when I started the 519, that's who I work with. They find themselves in cultural communities. And of course, when you're living in a cultural community, these people are also coming here. They're brought with them that homophobic beliefs and behaviors. And as someone who's new coming in and trying to settle in, not necessarily Toronto because we're so overpopulated too, and trying to, fan out in smaller cities and towns, it's very hard. And people don't know how to exist in these small areas. They're looking for communities, and communities are accepting of who they are. They don't want to hide. But it's very hard because, you find yourself in a little town wherein, people are not very exposed, or LGBT issues are not talk about so much within that town or city itself. It's hard to be out. And of course, education is always best way to go, and training. And the 519 has been into small towns and giving trainings to whatever agencies are requesting that. So we're trying to help to fight back on homophobia in these small cities, to reduce the number of people who are so homophobic, and increase tolerance.
And actually, tolerance level for me doesn't really matter. I want an acceptance level, right?
You don't want to just be tolerated.
I don't want to be tolerated. You tolerate the sun when it's too heavy. I want to be accepted for who I am. I want to be celebrated, but I want to celebrate all the others as well. We are all unique, all different, and that's what makes us so wonderful as a society.
Well, let me get your opinion on this, because there was another significant political event that took place, I guess it was a couple of weeks ago now, at the Conservative Party of Canada's convention, where they took out of their statement of principles the idea that marriage had to be between one man and one woman. I guess a lot of people saw that as quite a significant historic move. How did you feel about it?
I felt exactly the same, and I'm quite happy about it. And it took them time, but they came on the right side of history. So for me, I'm okay with this. I think that everybody is allowed to change their mind, and I think that education is really important and part of this. So for me, I celebrate this. I'm really happy about this. Yes, it could have come sooner, but now they are sitting on the right side of history. So for me, that's a beautiful victory.
What role do you think, we're really focusing a lot this week because, frankly, this Orlando story has been the biggest story in the world over this past week. So there's a lot of people doing a lot of thinking about these issues today. What role do you think there is for governments in this country to try to make progress on this issue of, you want to call it tolerance, you want to call it respect, you want to call it celebrating, pick your word?
Well, government should reach out to the international communities, reach out to countries that are still battling with homophobia, and say, well, our system here is not perfect, but we're trying to lead by an example, and have conversations, talk to the people on the ground, and make sure that we are working with them to help to reduce some of these things. People say, well, America is so accepting, but this happened. It can happen anywhere in the world, okay? It can happen here in Toronto, I accept that, but at least we still have things in place that will, help to protect us, and we have rights that we can, we can live by. We, as LGBT people, we understand and know that there are voices out there, there are allies out there, and I'd want for government here to, listen to the people here in Toronto, people who have the lived experience, listen to the marginalized people, take it internationally. When you've understood clearly what's happening here, take it to the international market and speak there.
Mathieu, in my last half minute here, what can governments do to lead on this?
A lot of things. Listen to the marginalized communities a lot more. But I'm in a 17-year relationship and with the same man, obviously, and I'm not allowed to give blood yet. I would have to stop having sex with him for 5 years. There's still a lot of work to do. We are going in the right way, but, you know, let's not be complacent. We still have a lot of work to do, and that's why we need a Pride Month, and we need to be out there, we need to be political, and we need to lead the conversation.
Let me just understand that. You're not allowed to donate blood to Canadian Blood Services because the assumption is if you're a gay man, you're more than likely to have HIV.
Yes. Which is, and with all the blood tests that we can do these days, it's you know, we can see these things really, really quickly. I would have to stop to have sex for 5 years. Imagine, would you be able to do this?
We're done. Time's up. I want to thank Carleen Williams-Clark and Mathieu Chantelois for coming into TVO tonight for this discussion. Appreciate it both.
Thank you very much for having me.
Help TVO create a better world through the power of learning. Visit TVO.org and make a tax-deductible donation today.